Hi ladies, this is chapter 21 on the evolution of populations. So what we're going to start studying right now is microevolution, which is the change in allele frequencies within a population over generations. So a population is just a localized group of individuals, okay, the same species, that can interbreed and produce fertile offspring. Okay, within that population, they have a gene pool. So this is all the alleles for every single gene that is possible within that population. All together. So you can see here, it's not technically a pool, but this is a population of boar. Okay, we're just focusing on the B gene here. So every single allele would be part of that gene pool. So, and also remember that genetic variation among individuals is caused by differences in genes, so they're alleles, and those phenotypic variations are reflections of the genetic variation within the population. Most of the time when you're studying populations, you can only see the phenotypic traits. You really can't tell what the genes are by studying a population unless you do genetic testing. So a lot of times scientists will actually only focus on the phenotypic variations and try to predict or try to better understand the genetic traits that go with them. What we're going to be focusing on with microevolution is Hardy-Weinberg Equilibrium. And basically what Hardy-Weinberg Equilibrium is, it says that the frequencies of alleles and genotypes within a population are going to remain constant from generation to generation. So in non-evolving populations, there's no mutation, no random mating, no natural selection. They're large populations, so no genetic drift, and there's no gene flow or migration. So, and if any of these conditions are violated, the population is evolving. Now, this is it's very difficult for a population to be in Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. So it's very easy for this to be violated. And I'm going to go into all the specific conditions for non-evolving populations right now. So in order for a population to not evolve, okay, there can't be any mutation. So there can't be any new genes, no new alleles, okay? Any new genes or alleles that arise are going to change the gene pool. Sometimes these mutations can be neutral, harmful, sometimes very occasionally, very rare, they can be beneficial. And mutation rates are typically pretty low. Prokaryotes and viruses have the highest mutation rates, but they're very, very low. And in order for a mutation to enter into the gene pool, it has to be in the gametes, being able to be passed on. So something like a gene mutation that causes cancer isn't necessarily going to be something that's passed on unless it occurs in the gametes. Natural selection, we spent a lot of time looking at this. Remember that there's differential success in reproduction rate, so certain phenotypes or certain genotypes would be more successful at passing on their genes than other individuals in the population, which can cause the population allele frequencies and genotypic frequencies to change over time. So here's an example of DDT. So the allele that confers resistance to DDT would increase in a population over time because it conferred an advantageous ability of that individual to survive and reproduce more than others. Genetic drift, this is just basically random changes. So allele frequencies are going to fluctuate unpredictably from one generation to the next. In a large population, you wouldn't notice it. It'd be very, very slight. But in small populations, this random change, just like maybe you could even almost think about it like flipping a quarter. You could theoretically flip a quarter 5 times in a row and get 5 heads. You could theoretically flip it and get 2 heads and 3 tails. Okay? It's more likely that you would get 2 heads and 3 tails as opposed to getting 5 heads in a row. But they're all possible possibilities. And this is what genetic drift is all about. It's just random change to the genes, the gene pool in the population. Okay. And we're going to go through the founder effect and the bottleneck effect. These are specifically affected or can cause genetic drift to occur. So the founder effect is when some individuals establish a new population somewhere else. Okay, they could be moving to a new island, new place, but they're separate from their original population. And because it's a small group of individuals that founds that new population, sometimes that new population can have a different allele frequency than the other. The bottleneck effect is very similar. So sometimes there's a drastic reduction in population size, either environmental, possibly like a new virus or something that happened. For example, the last ice age, there was a large populations of cheetahs, and from that ice age, the majority of the cheetah population was reduced. So now there's very little genetic variation in the cheetah population because there's very few individuals that survived. And that was like 1,000 years ago. Currently, Florida panthers are disappearing as well, but that's more human effects. So when a bottleneck effect happens and you get a really small population, this is when genetic drift can take place very rapidly. So it's more easy. These chance occurrences can happen, are more likely to happen in a smaller population, and you'll see more drastic effects on the allelic frequencies or genotypic frequencies of a population. Gene flow is basically migration, so movement of alleles in and out of a population. So immigration moving in, emigration moving out. This can alter the allele frequencies within a population. Sexual selection, very similar to natural selection, but this is actually based on the individual's ability to find a mate and have mating success. So this usually results in sexual dimorphism. You can see this is very common in the animal kingdom. Okay, males have these traits that tell the female that they have better genetic qualities than the other males. So large tail feathers in peacocks, manes and size in lions, antlers in deer. This indicates that they have a high genetic quality. And we'll spend a little bit more time looking at sexual selection because it's actually quite interesting. So the last thing I want to show you is the effect of microevolution on population. So the microevolution can affect a population in 3 different ways. It can cause directional selection, disruptive selection, or stabilizing selection. I'm going to show you what this looks like. So this is my initial population of mice. You can see I have a variety of different colors of fur, white all the way to black. Okay, this is my original population. Usually populations will follow a bell curve. If maybe this population, maybe the environment around this population changes and it gets a little bit, the environment around them becomes darker. There's more browns, possibly because maybe snow melted, so there's no ice and snow around. What could happen is that the individuals in the population have the darker colors will blend into their environment better, and as a result, they will survive and be able to reproduce more than the lighter individuals within their population. Or maybe we have disruptive selection. So maybe it's a rocky, snowy environment that the environment changes and now it's really snowy and it's really rocky in places. So there's really no browns and no like dirt around. It's just pretty much dark rocks and white snow. This could cause disruptive selection. So white mice have a higher probability of surviving if on the snow, and they can survive and reproduce more than the other phenotypes. The dark mice, if they spend most of their time on the rocks, would survive and reproduce more than the brown ones. Okay, this would cause the population to change and you would reduce those intermediate phenotypes. Stabilizing selection favors the intermediate. So say, for example, the environment changes and now there's a lot of brown dirt. There's not a lot of dark areas. There's not a lot of snow or white areas. And it favors the intermediate, those brown mice. So brown mice would be able to survive and reproduce more. They will pass on this trait to their offspring more often than the white or the dark mice. And as a result, you will lose the extremes in the intermediate numbers of that phenotype will rise. So this is microevolution. We are going to spend a lot more time looking at Hardy-Weinberg Equilibrium and modeling populations. Please bring any questions you have about this material with you to class. Have a nice day, girls.